The other team that has given us both an immense amount of joy this season is the Memphis Grizzlies. The Grizzlies are, for me, probably the most, they are legitimately the team I have the most fun watching because they play such an attractive brand of basketball. They play so together, especially when Ja Morant is out there. He's obviously missed some time recently. But that time that he has missed, I think, has moved Jaren Jackson into a more centralized role, which has been interesting to watch in its own right, to be honest. And I love the Memphis Grizzlies. I've thought for a while now that Taylor Jenkins is probably the most underrated coach in the NBA. And I've seen nothing so far this year that makes me think otherwise. Everything that they do seems competent and coherent. All of the players on their roster develop in the way that they should develop. Like Desmond Bane has reached the ceiling of what we thought Desmond Bane would be in season 2 of his career. Dillon Brooks has reached the pinnacle of what we thought Dillon Brooks could reach, if not exceeded that ceiling, given how good he is on defense. Like D'Anthony Melton was not very good in Phoenix and has immediately become a real difference maker off the bench for Memphis. All of these guys, they get better when they go to Memphis. And I think that's a testament to the coaching staff, to the front office. They draft the right kind of guys as well. I love the Memphis Grizzlies just so much.
Well, I was curious. You said apex and kind of the top. Do you think that Bane is there, or do you think that Bane? I'm curious. Bane and Brooks specifically. You think how much more growth plate is there for them?
No, I think that there's. I don't know about Brooks. I think Brooks is probably tapped out at this point in terms of where he is. Because like high level defender. The problem with him is that he's always going to be a iffy shot selection guy. He just doesn't have the like vision in passing, I don't think, to where he's going to be like a real difference maker. Where like the next level for him would be top 40 player in the league. He's probably a top 60 player, top 70 player already, I think, given the 3-point shooting, the defensive value and everything. He's an above average starter, right? Yeah. Something along that line. Desmond Bane, I think Desmond still has a little bit of ceiling. I think he's better with the ball than Dillon Brooks is. Like, I think that obviously he's a 40% 3-point shooter. Defensively, he's always going to have the inherent limitation of his wingspan, but he's so physically strong. And I think that like that just really allows him to get into guys' space. And he's just like an elite character guy again. Like he's going to keep getting better. This is a guy that just works and works and works like crazy. I mean, I think there's more ceiling. Like I think that what we've seen during Ja Morant's absence from him, where he like I think he's averaged like 18 points a game, something along those lines. Mm-hmm. Like that's probably what his actual ceiling is on a good team. Like when there is a Ja Morant next to him and there is a Jaren Jackson next to him full time and all of that. But I mean, if he gets 18 points a game playing as like a starter next to those guys, that's a fucking incredible piece to have for them.
Yeah, it's funny that we were joking about this on Twitter a little bit the other night when he went crazy against, I guess, Dallas is the team, which they love it when Desmond Bane goes crazy against them. It's just epic heartache for them. But
and Desmond loves going crazy against them because they passed on him, and he knows that they passed on him. Like he said that in an interview that like the fact that they took Josh Green over him was motivation for him.
Right, and all those teams, like that one, I'll never I just will never understand how he fell as far as he did. But I do think that like the on ball, creating his own shot. We saw some of that in summer league. It was sort of jarring to be like, oh man, if he has this frontier on his radar that he could go in this direction. That's a pretty amazing player. But I think you're probably right. Whenever we think about players, sometimes we think about like what's the max that they could do. I think Jeremy Grant's a good example of like what you were talking about. Like if a player thinks of themselves in a certain way, Julius Randle is this way too. They like have to be a primary. They're kind of stubborn. Roll stubborn is a word I use a lot. That like if they have to be that way, then maybe their limitations as a player will be a little bit lower. But like a Bane, this is probably close. Maybe he could go to a worse team and pump up the counting stats a little bit. That's possible.
Yep.
But I think if you think about like in the winning context, yeah, I had an interesting stat. I was kind of looking at their like with Morant, without Morant stuff. Now, I think some of the sample is a little tricky here. I think people will at a glance be like, Morant's down. Okay. I think that him being out is kind of can be a blessing in disguise because you get reps you might not have gotten otherwise. You're not just going to sit Ja Morant. But like from the beginning of the season to the 26th when he got injured, they were allowing 1.06 points per chance defending all picks, which was worst in the NBA. From the first game he was out until now, that number went all the way to 0.797, which is best in the NBA. So they literally went from 30 to first. But that's because they've been playing teams that were without players, overall, but they can just put a lot of physical defender combos out there, man. It's really wild.
There's that too. And there's the Dillon Brooks factor too, because Brooks missed a lot of the early season and has been available for most of this time. So I would say that probably plays a significant role as well, but I mean, like your point is like kind of that Ja Morant is a poor defender in ball screens, which is accurate. I mean, he's not a very good defender. He dies on the screen a lot. It's hard, I think, for a guy that's that skinny and
it is
just that small to manage ball screens. But no, you're right. I do think that they look better defensively without Ja Morant to an extent.
There are like conditions and caveats. I think that I don't think that don't no one go listen to this and like quote me and say Kyle said like they're better without Morant.
Kyle Mann
there's so many
saying that Ja Morant sucks. That's what he's saying.
Basketball is a plus minus game, and the gives and the takes, and your philosophy is driven by what you want to give and what you want to take. That's my kind of stance on it. And with Morant out there, you're getting a whole lot to make up for those questions and caveats. And you're right about Dillon Brooks. I mean, like he's getting comfortable again too, and you can kind of see that and getting back into rhythm and stuff. But I think it could end up being a blessing in disguise for Memphis that these guys have gotten a little more run. I'm curious to ask you about two guys that we talked specifically directly about before the draft were Santi Aldamas and Zaire. Yeah, I mean, what he's been out there way more than I ever would have fathomed. I just did not expect to see him out there that much less shooting.
I thought they were going to stash him with Gran Canaria, and then he ends up signing. So like, I'm like blown away that he's playing right now.
Yeah. I was like, it could happen. I was like, I expect it to be something. I was like, but in time, it was like, no, year one, he's like actually getting minutes and playing. I did not.
They just do this. It's great.
Yeah. If you have the quality of the organization, you can kind of, but Zaire's the other one. I mean, I know he's been out with an injury, a little more erratic and wild. I mean, incredibly inefficient, but things we expected. It's not a guarantee. I'm not selling my stock. I still think that like the point I always make is that like, if you think about where Mikal Bridges, I'm not saying this is where he'll end up, but if you think about Mikal Bridges at 18, 19, would you have thought that he would have been what he is at 22, 23? Would have been pretty hard to predict. Zaire's still pretty young. He doesn't create anything for himself. He's basically just an eater, not a chef at all. So that's one to keep an eye on. I definitely have kind of watched because I put my own neck out there a little bit on that prediction, but they have a lot of, like you said, Memphis is well run, and because they don't whiff on those chances, they just have a lot of kind of seeds planted that are could go somewhere. Yeah, we'll see.
Well, and I think for them too, I think that Zaire was the right pick because they have enough like relatively lower upside wings that we know are good already, right? Like we knew after last year Desmond Bane was good. We knew that Dillon Brooks was good. Kyle Anderson is a completely awesome league average wing, right? Mm-hmm. Like they have sheer competence there already. What they need more than anything next to Ja Morant is like a shot creating wing. And typically when you're drafting at 17 originally, and then you move up to 10, essentially in order to draft a Zaire Williams or maybe they would have taken a Franz Wagner if he would have fallen to 10. Maybe they would have taken someone different depending on how the draft board had fallen. But when you are in that range, let's say 10 and lower, and you're trying to draft a difference-making wing who can be a shot creator, you're going to have to draft young and you're going to have to go through bumps. Like, it is what it is, right? Like, you're just going to have to deal with the growing pains that come. And with Zaire, there's always going to be growing pains. I guarantee you that Memphis went into this year thinking that Zaire Williams was not going to play in their playoff rotation, right? Like, anything that they got in addition to that was going to be gravy. Like, they were going to be fucking ecstatic if they got anything from him this year. And I think they think the same with Santi Aldama. Like, you and I both loved Santi because of his dexterity and his coordination, his hand-eye coordination particularly. His feel for the game is just fucking outstanding. But like, he has significant work to do on his body. Like, he's 6'11", 200 pounds.
Yeah.
And those guys take time. Zaire Williams is 6'9", 180 pounds. Like, those guys take time. And in the case of Memphis, I think that their organization has earned the benefit of the doubt when it comes to drafting guys like this and letting them grow and mature. And clearly everything they've done, every button they've pressed from a development standpoint has worked thus far under this front office and under the Taylor Jenkins coaching staff. So yeah, I think that Zaire Williams is still the pick that I would make for the Memphis Grizzlies, even though, Chris Duarte would probably help them immensely right now.
Right now,
Chris Duarte is also 2 years older than Jaren Jackson. I think like 3 years older than Ja Morant.
Oh yeah.
So like he's like barely on their timeline in terms of age is the crazy thing. So like I think he's legitimately like 2 years older than Desmond Bane, despite the fact that Desmond Bane was a 4-year college player at TCU that entered the NBA a year earlier than Chris Duarte.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Duarte is like older than Jason Tatum. Let's see, he's 24 and a half years old.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and
I mean,
Dez is what, like 22 and a half, 23 and a half?
Yeah,
like in that range?
Something like that. But I think you're right. They've totally earned the benefit of the doubt. I mean, big shocker to draft nerds are praising the Grizzlies, but I mean, they're an organization that doesn't, you see this a lot. Like, we have this problem where like teams just get caught looking backwards so much in terms of like their holistic way that they think about the game, like the things that work, where the game's going. And I don't think that Memphis has suffered from that. And I think that that's why a player like Bane would fall. I think that's why a player like Xavier Tillman would fall, or things like that. It's just like value being placed in the wrong areas for people, and those kind of inexplicable things that happened. I'm speculating. That's my theory as to why those things happen. It's just kind of like flawed, outdated thinking, not being they think this is the way we've always done it, and they're not quick to kind of start over in the process of the way they think.
And here's the thing with Memphis too. I think Memphis does a better job of doing this than any organization. I think that they do a better job of mixing the old school scouting stuff with new school analytics. They identify players that are really interesting and that have produced at an exceptionally high level, while also mixing that with the old school scouting stuff of drafting just fucking good people. Like, they don't draft people that don't work. They don't draft people that like are shitty to be around. Like, they don't take the risk of the guy that, people have off the court questions about, right? That's just not what they do. So I think that it's a combo of, the draft Twitter new school thinking mixed really well with like the old school, we don't take shitheads thing, and like I think that's a recipe for success that like more teams should copy, frankly. Like, watch the tape, look at the analytics, mix it all together, and don't take assholes. Like, it's not, it sounds like an easy formula, and it's not an easy formula. I don't mean it to sound easier than I'm making it sound, but it's I think that they do a great job of really mixing those things together.
Well, yeah, that's what you're describing is the starting point, and then all the work comes afterwards. And I think historically, I think something that people underrate is the people, like in terms of like the players, like the all-time great players. You know, if you look down through there, it's like all those guys like at the top of those conversations are pretty bright guys. They're pretty driven, you know, in that way. And I think that, you know, I'm sure there's all kinds of like psychology that goes into that for how they do their process. I have no clue, but um, they're a team that I guess the question would be, do they need one more like high impact piece, or do you think that they're going to kind of hover in that Utah zone where they have like a lot of good pieces but missing the like huge difference maker? Because Utah has kind of floated in that range for a long time. You know, Donovan's kind of on the cusp of it, like on the cusp of like breaking out and becoming that guy. Whether or not he can, I guess that's the question for Memphis. And then if you're drafting in the area where it's, you know, they're not despicable, they're not going to be in the conversation with the OKCs, with the Houstons, like the guys, the teams that could get those swings to get that type of player. How do they get them? Are they going to make a move to get a player like that? Because to me, I kind of feel like that's the next thing for them. You know, that now that they've got that foundation there in terms of their like personnel acquisition and how they draft.
Right.
Do you agree with me that like where do you think they are in terms of like their timeline? Like, is this enough to kind of get them to the level they want to get to?
No, I think they need one more, which is why like I liked the Zaire Williams move. Like go get your upside swing that you think maybe can be that guy, right? But additionally, I think it speaks. I think that the Jonas Valanciunas move they made this summer speaks to the fact that they might feel that way as well, right? Like you go out and you trade one of, for my money, like the 6 best centers in the NBA last year for Steven Adams to move up in the draft twice in the 2021 draft. And then you pick up an additional future first round pick, which gives you another asset in your war chest to play with down the road whenever you have to try and acquire that last guy. So I think that, you know, look, this doesn't come from having talked to Memphis at all. Like, I don't know if they think they have enough. They might think that. But
maybe Ja's that guy, but I mean, I'm not totally sure about that, but he's, or Triple J.
But you know what? Yeah. Even if he is that guy, even if he is like a top 5 player in the league at some point, they still probably need another guy, right? Like even under the best case scenario, they still probably need another guy because Giannis Antetokounmpo is fucking incredible. Like Kevin Durant's fucking amazing. LeBron and Anthony Davis is like unbelievable, right? There are always going to be these teams that have another top 5 guy that might beat you. Denver, for instance, has Nikola Jokic, one of the best big men offensively in NBA history, and Jamal Murray, and whatever Michael Porter can be, and Aaron Gordon. Like they have all of these dudes. I think that Memphis still probably needs one more. And like I said, like I think that their actions over the course of the last year and a half indicate that they think they need one more as well.
Sure.